And let me, Alessandra, I'm bringing you in here. You're on mute. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for being part of DBW Global with us.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a really great day. I've enjoyed watching all of the presentations. No tech problems so far, so we're doing good.
Oh, please do not say something like that. We
Please
got
don't
2 more
jinx us
days.
that way. I
No.
know. There we go.
Yeah, we'll edit that out of the video. I'm teasing. Let me make you host,
Okay, great.
and that way you can share your screen.
Let's see. Can you see me?
Yes, that looks great. It looks like that's full. Is that full size? It's hard for me to tell.
You know, can you see other things? I can.
No, no. Oh
There.
yeah,
Is that better?
it's
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
Perfect. So you're off and running, Alessandra. Thank you very much.
All right, well, it's great to be here. My name is Alessandra Torre. I'm the president of Authors AI. I'm also an author, so I know several of y'all from the author world. But I'm here today to talk about Authors AI and how we're using artificial intelligence in the world of fiction. And I have a short slide presentation, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that we can get to in this time. So let's dive right in to what we do. So we're using the power of artificial intelligence to help authors write better books. And by write better books, what I'm really talking about there is rewriting and editing. So once an author has a completed manuscript, that is when Authors AI can jump in and help. We are not using artificial intelligence to actually write novels. That's not an area that we're going into. And in the future, we will also be using, the near future, we'll be using our artificial intelligence to help readers find great books. So we're really excited about that. That will be with our sister site, which is bingebooks.com, and that's coming this fall. Okay, so the problem that we're tackling is that when authors have a finished manuscript, they really need feedback, right? That's one of the first things that they want, and they often don't know where to find it. So what they're looking for is immediate feedback, something that fits inside their budget, which for many new authors, their budget is very small. Some unbiased feedback, and actionable. So for me, with my first book, the only feedback I got was from my mother, who was definitely biased and was not my target reader at all. And she was very slow in her feedback. So while she was free, that was really the only checkbox that she marked. And a lot of early beta reader feedback isn't actionable. So that is where Marlowe comes into play. Our artificial intelligence has a name. It's called Marlowe, and she provides a detailed, high-level critique of your novel. So you submit your manuscript to Marlowe, and in less than 15 minutes, you get back a beautiful 25-page report. These are some screenshots of it here, and it's under $30 a month. So we like to refer to her as a beta reader, developmental editor, and copy editor, kind of all rolled into one. And I'm going to dive into that report in just a few minutes and show you what it includes and how it's actionable to an author. And we always like to preface this by saying that while we call her a developmental editor and beta reader, she does not replace a human editor. So we believe there is nothing as powerful and amazing as a human editor. So Marlowe is not meant to replace a human editor, but to be used by authors that maybe can't afford a human editor or can help supplement that human editor. Now let's chat about how she works. So her precursor was the bestsellerometer. So if you've read the bestseller code, if you haven't read it, it's a fantastic novel. It's not a novel, it's a fantastic book that came out 4 years ago. It was written by Jodi Archer and Matthew Jockers. Matthew Jockers is one of our co-founders at Authors AI. And what was really great about this book is it explored a groundbreaking algorithm that read a novel. You could feed a novel into it. The technology knew nothing about that novel. It didn't know the author or the marketing budget or whether it was traditionally published or indie published, but it would read that novel and say, yes, this book is going to be a bestseller, or no, this book is not going to be a bestseller. It read over 4,500 books and ran that test, and 83% of the time, it accurately predicted whether that book was going to be a bestseller or not. And that was based, again, strictly on the manuscript. It didn't know if Stephen King wrote that book or if, you know, Bradley wrote that book. So, but it could read and predict it. And when it said, yes, this book is going to be a bestseller, what the test was it a bestseller for 10 weeks or longer on the New York Times list? So, so that was really cool. And how that technology worked is it read best-selling novels and non-best-selling novels and determined commonalities between them. So Dr. Matt Jockers completely re-engineered and expanded that artificial intelligence to fit today's popular fiction marketplace. And that is really how Marlowe came to be. And that is what Marlowe is. So today, now, right, as you're watching this, you could upload your manuscript into Marlowe. She isn't going to predict whether it's going to be a bestseller. She doesn't have that, but what she does do is she knows the common traits of best-selling novels and what makes a great novel, and she can read your manuscript and give you feedback to help your novel become a page turner or one that's loved by readers. So let's look a little bit at what her report includes, and this is one of the first things that you see when you order a pro report. She has free reports and pro reports. All of the really cool stuff is mostly in the pro report. There's some really great stuff in the free report as well. But this is one of the most popular things that authors like to see and editors like to see, as well as me. It's the first thing I look at. It really plots out your book, and it's twists and turns on a graph. So you can see where action is occurring in your novel, and both the plot turns, but also the narrative arc. And this is the girl with the dragon tattoo. So you can see here, and what's cool is also at each of these high and low points, it gives you the percentage into the book, and it will also give you a few lines so you can see, and I'll show that in a future plot. So this is a really cool thing that you can see, and it's something I haven't seen anywhere else in the industry. Pacing is another area, and I showed a different view of this because I want you to see how Marlowe shows you your data on your novel, but then also the actionable information she gives you about it. So this is a screenshot of the book, and you can see here the pacing chart for The Runaway Jury. So by pacing, what Marlowe is talking about is how quickly readers are turning pages in your book. So with The Runaway Jury, it starts kind of slow, but as you move closer and closer to the end, it really picks up the pace. And you don't necessarily want breakneck speed the entire time. You want your readers to have a chance, to catch their breath at times. So it's good to have highs and lows in your pacing. And here she plots out where those highs and lows occur. So it gives you the data, right? Typically in a really cool chart or graph like this. And then there's always a section that says how to use this data. And that's where you can get actionable information, where she explains what is typically found in a best-selling novel. And then here it breaks down the areas of fast pacing and slow pacing and a few lines of the book from that section. So you can go, oh, okay, I know that scene. That is the scene that she's considering, excuse me, like your fastest paced scene. Character traits is another cool feature. These are the 4 main characters in Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So you can see if all of your characters, in newer authors' books, often debut author books, we see that their 4 main characters are all very similar. And I think that's because a lot of new authors write characters that are just like them, right? Or they might not have developed the traits to differentiate really their character's personality and voice. So it's nice to see, obviously Stephen King knows what he's doing and has done a great job with these characters, but here you can actually see their personality traits. And if your villain is super agreeable all the time, maybe you need to do a little bit of tweaking. Another fun thing is her naughty language section. So this is Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. But Marlowe doesn't blush. She doesn't judge any author for their use of dirty language, but she will let you know how much you used in the book and how much you used each word. So maybe you didn't realize that you dropped so many, F-bombs in your language, or that it was as clean as it was, but here she breaks it down. And when you're talking about words that you're using a lot, that kind of leads into our next section of the report, which is authorial tics. So a lot of us have crutch words that we might not even realize that we have. For instance, you might say, by the way, a lot in your writing. For me, my characters whisper a lot, way too much. And they also shake their head a lot. That's kind of my my bad things. But what Marlo points out is repetitive phrasing in your writing, phrases you use over and over again. The cliche finder is another section of the report. On the right side here, you can see 50 Shades of Grey. She used like shooting fish in a barrel twice in the book. So it lists the cliche, and some of them aren't always cliches. Her cliche dictionary is huge. So some of them might not actually be what you would consider cliches, but another one is In Seventh Heaven, which was used twice in the book. So I always like to see that because a lot of times I don't even realize that I use things, especially not multiple times in the novel, and then I can go in and find those and replace them. And then there are some other areas, readability score, your sentence stats. I really happen to love the dialogue breakdown, which gives what percentage of your book is dialogue versus narrative. And then there's a really cool chart where you can see where that dialogue is occurring in the book. So it might be that the first half of your book is really heavy into dialogue, and then you have no dialogue scenes in the second half of the book. So that's really neat and something that you can see. The entire report honestly shows you your book in a way that I have never seen my writing before. So it's really neat just to get that completely different perspective on your writing and your different stories. Now, who is Marlo for? Right now, the bulk of our customers are authors. So indie or traditional authors, we have both. Most of them like to run Marlo at every stage of the process. So with every draft, before it goes to an editor, they run a Marlo report on it. But we also have had a lot of interest from literary agents who are interested in either using Marlo to tackle a slush pile that they haven't had a chance to get to, or to look at books that they're in the process of acquiring. The same with editors. The first few editors we showed this to, I think, got a little freaked out that we were trying to compete with them in the space, but we have editors on our team who have helped us to cultivate and improve the report in terms of its usability for authors. And a lot of editors can use this as a supplement to their editorial letter, or use some of the graphics in it when they give feedback to their clients. Publishers, we have publishers working with us now, small publishers, and we're in discussion with major publishers to use Marlo both in their acquisitions and editorial process. And we're always interested in working with educators. So whether you're an educator of a creative writing program and you're interested in running your students' manuscripts or scenes through Marlo, or if you want to see a Marlo report on a classic, either way, reach out to us. If you're in any of these groups, we have industry access available. You can visit authors.ai/industry-pass. And Rob McDonald is our VP of Business Development, and Rob at bingebooks.com. You can reach Rob directly there if you want to start a conversation. And if you're interested in just giving Marlo a try, or swing by authors.ai, we have a special code for Digital Book World. DBW 2020 will save you 20%. Like I said earlier, we have free plans. We also have Marlo Pro, which is our gold full 25-page report, and both are available within 15 minutes. You can get feedback on your manuscript and start playing around. And there's also full samples, so of several best-selling books, so you can look through excuse me, full reports on books that you may have already read. We are a new company. We're trying to spread the word, so we'd love any opportunities to appear on podcast or vlogs or make guest posts on your website. And we're also starting conversations about partnerships with innovative companies. So you can reach me directly or reach out to Rob and we can start that conversation if you're interested. Again, I'm Alessandra. I'm the president of Authors AI, and my direct email is here. It's a@bingebooks.com. That wraps it up.
Alessandra, great job. Yeah,
Thank you.
great. Yeah, great job. And if you want to leave that up another second, you can, or whatever. And then if you can unshare your screen. Yeah, so this is super interesting stuff. And by the way, thank you earlier for when you said your system doesn't know whether it's Stephen King who wrote the book or Bradley. Thank you for.
I have no doubt that your writing is identical, or right on par. But yeah,
I got a kick out of that. So, there's a couple of questions. We'll get to those in a second. I want to ask, first of all, with what Jennifer Baker, she of Penguin Random House and Minorities in Publishing podcast said earlier, we had a conversation. Part of the conversation was about sensitivity readers. Mm-hmm. And just some of the machinations that go on within publishers to attempt to have content be published that in their estimation represents authenticity.
Yeah.
One of the things about what you're doing, as well as some other companies that we touch, from a voice and AI standpoint that aren't necessarily squarely in publishing like you, is how these things will meet. And so my question for you is, can you speak at all to the thought that you've put into Marlowe on basically providing analysis that a sensitivity reader might have to say, like your tics? Are you referencing terms that might cause someone to view your book as problematic? Are you going down tropes that might lead to somewhere similar? Share your thoughts on that with me.
Yeah, I saw that fireside chat. It was really interesting. She's a great speaker. I'm really glad you had her on. And I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of sensitivity reads. So is it possible? Yes. Is it something that Marlo can do right now? No. But what's great about her is she can be trained to do just about anything. She just has to be fed the data. So it would be a conversation we'd have to have with our data scientists. So with Matt Jocker, who's really her parent, and the rest of the data scientist team. So can we feed in problematic novels and identify them as problematic? And then can we feed in novels that are non-problematic or that are executed the right way? And then can she distinguish those differences? She's very good with language. So I would think that a lot of that, what your speaker was referring to was a lot of plot-driven items, right? Like, so is the white character being the hero of the story or something like that? And so I think I don't know the answer to that question. I think almost anything can be done with AI. So I think there's a future there, and I think that would be something really interesting. We haven't dove into that as a company yet, but it's something that I think will definitely be on a roadmap at some point in time.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's not an easy question to answer, and I think even as close as you can get to it, the more valuable you become as a publishing partner and entity. We've got a couple of questions stacking up here in the Q&A, and I'm going to ask all of them. Is Authors AI only available for books in English?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, no, for now. Yeah, I'm sure in the future we could do more languages, but right now just English.
That's perfect. And so my understanding is that a concern expressed by some authors is that this type of AI could, quote, learn the author's voice and could subsequently write books in the author's voice. Is this concern valid? And if so, is it being addressed? How is it being addressed?
I think the concern is valid. There are people using AI in the fiction space that are in fiction and nonfiction, mostly in nonfiction, but I'm sure it will journey over to fiction where they are trying to write books by AI. It is something that we've drawn a line in the sand and have absolutely no interest in ever doing. Our goal as a company, it's not something we believe in. Our goal as a company is to use AI for good, not evil. And we consider that to be evil. We don't want computers to replace humans. And I don't think they will ever be able to. And I in terms of writing books at the same level and caliber. But I think it's a concern. It's definitely a concern, and something that we need to keep an eye on as an industry. But it's certainly not going to come from us, from Marlo.
That's interesting. Yeah, you and I don't share that same opinion. I think that the day of AI writing books that no one will ever have a clue that it was an AI that wrote it is pretty soon. But that's another topic for another day. Will AI be used for what you're planning at Binge Books?
Yes, we will be using Marlo and Marlo's feedback. Marlo can read a book and know everything about it in a matter of minutes. And so she will be able to give book recommendations that know everything. It's like she's like a super librarian, right? That can read hundreds of thousands of books and give. So yes, AI will be used for what we're planning at Binge Books in the very near future.
Cool. And is it possible for Marlo to determine genres or categories, especially in libraries?
So when you upload your manuscript to Marlo, you tell her what genre it is. At the moment, her reports are not genre specific, but they will be in the very near future. She just has to read enough of every genre so that she can give genre specific reports. Will she be able to identify a genre, read a book and identify a genre? I'm sure she could. We haven't built that in because we're under the assumption that the author is going to provide us that genre.
And then,
but yeah, she could definitely do that.
Okay, cool. And then last question, I'm gonna pull it out of the chat here. Have you had pushback on Marlo for either narrowing creativity or creating formulaic narrative?
Yeah, we hear that very often. And so we've gotten that pushback. Why I don't think it's accurate, and hopefully this answer will make sense, is she will tell you that your book is slow in the beginning, right? And it drags in the beginning. But unlike a human editor, she's not going to tell you she's not going to suggest that you delete this scene and move it to the end. And why don't you start with a car chase instead of, leading up to the car chase? So she can tell you that your pacing is slow, but she's not going to tell you how to fix it. She can tell you that your characters aren't aggressive enough, but she's not going to give you ideas of how to make them more aggressive. So that is where the human editor can really come into play, or where the author's personal creativity comes into play. So while that is a concern that I've heard a lot of times, as soon as someone starts working with Marlo, I think they realize her, I hate to say limitations, but her limitations in terms of plot brainstorming. She's not going to brainstorm the book with you. She's just going to help you hone it down to make it more enjoyable.
So I knew from the moment that I saw the information on this that we would love to have this as part of Digital Book World, and I'm so glad that it worked out. With what we do, working with voice and AI across all these different industries, we see one of the common threads is people don't exactly know how to feel or even talk about AI replacing human beings and the potential for that. And, I give you credit. I think the way you handled it, in your presentation was, had a lot of finesse. And it was interesting to see. I think that if you're bad at your job, AI absolutely is going to replace you.
Well, let's chat. I mean, I don't know how much time you have for the next person, but I will. So do you think, I'm not saying that AI couldn't write a book that a reader could enjoy. I think that's possible. What I think would probably happen is the AI would write the book, and then they would give a first draft, and then you'd need a human to come in and kind of clean it up. I think that's possible, and that's what really scares me as an author. My bread and butter is books, right? So that scares me as an author. Do I think that you're going to come up with these amazing once-in-a-lifetime books from an AI? No. Do I think there are going to be books on the shelf that are commercially successful that were written in large part by an AI? Yeah, that scares me, and I think it is a possibility. But I think there's a certain level of genius that I don't think a computer can come up with creatively. I think it can mimic our writing styles, but I think that extra special spark to figure out a plot twist, I don't think a computer can figure that out. But that's why I'm throwing it back to you. Do you?
Yeah, and we've got a few minutes to talk about this, by the way, because this will completely replace my presentation at the end,
Oh,
which I'll
sorry.
just publish, which I'll publish separately. No, 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 it's fine. It was going to happen anyway. So my suspicion is that the sensitivity reader thing, this phenomenon of sensitivity readers becoming part of modern publishing, and the reasons why that has come to pass, provides exactly the snapshot of the future for publishing in terms of AI. For numerous reasons, some of which I think make a lot of sense. If you have someone write a book, if I wrote a book about antebellum slavery conditions, people would have a real problem with that, and I think that that's justified. Similarly, you will have, my opinion is, in the future, some real pushback from the consumer to books written by an AI, especially if it's not disclosed. The consumer is going to want to know who wrote this thing.
Yeah.
And want some transparency to some of the workflow that is totally alien to what we're used to right now. And that's the way I think it's going to go. I agree with you. I think the AI can most certainly write it, but that may not be acceptable all the way down the value chain.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think readers are going to have an issue with it. I think the first couple, it's going to be unique, right? Like I would buy a book written by an AI and read it because I would want to be like, oh, can I figure out, how can I pick apart this book, right? I think the first couple books will be widely publicized, and I think they will be bought by readers who are just curious. But I don't think it's a romantic. There is a romantic notion I think that readers have that they want a book that's written by a writer, their writer, their favorite author, and their favorite author being a computer just doesn't have that same, pizzazz. That being said, I look at how much technology's changed and things that maybe I would have thought before, like, oh, someone will never want a computer to, I don't know, do something. Now computers are doing all the time. So maybe that's just my wishful thinking that that readers are going to be loyal to having a human writer, but I don't know.
It's a brave new world, and I'll tell you something else I think about too is like when you think about, and it's on the film side, but you look at like a Star Wars, where you had some works within a universe published 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you have new works from the same universe published yesterday, whatever, a year ago, 2 years ago. And that's the whole genesis of this conversation about, people saying those films are garbage, people saying those films are great. And it's these different expectations and these different worldviews and perspectives, and how that all reconciles itself within an AI framework, and then voice layered onto that and all the things that's going to bring is super interesting. And so you're at the forefront of it. When you get acquired, remember us little people.
We're not going anywhere. We'll be back.
Alessandra, great job. Kudos to you for what you put together. You're going to keep getting, pushback. We see pushback to AI in every field. You'll have to navigate that however you do. Thank you for being part of Digital Book World with us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for all the questions. We appreciate them.
You got it. So